So this is going to be my top 10 list of the strongest comic book characters that I could personally whoop in a fight. Now, just some ground rules, right? Since I'm going to be the underdog, I think in most of these matchups, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes of prep time. I get to keep all current knowledge I have of the character. They don't know that I'm going after them, and I can only use the materials that I could reasonably get in 30 minutes, right? So I'm not going to have access to kryptonite or like rare earth metals that might be like a specific weakness. It's just going to be whatever I can like drive to the store, pick up, and then be ready with in 30 minutes. First up, we have the Absorbing Man from Marvel. Now, Absorbing Man's power is that anything he comes in contact with, he can absorb into his, and like it becomes his body type, I guess. So like, he got hit in the head with a glass by his girlfriend, or I guess whatever the woman is in this panel, and he turns into glass, right? Now, I'm not going to suggest something cheap, like I turn him into glass and I like manage to break him, because, I think like 15 inches of glass is going to be pretty hard to break through. But it is worth noting from this scene that he doesn't really have control, at least in his early iterations, over what he absorbs. It's just anything that really comes in contact with his skin. So here's my plan. I go to the nearest Five Below. I got one like 5 minutes from my house. I acquire a Super Soaker. Get him when he's not paying attention. Just hit him with a little squirt, turn him into a puddle, and then proceed to jump around in it, right? It's just that simple. Absorbing Man is horribly overglazed in the community. I could easily beat him with my 30 minutes prep time. Next up, we have Venom. Another character with a very easy to exploit weakness. He's very weak to sounds and vibrations. And we've seen like, church bells even. Like it doesn't have to be like some like high tech weaponry. He can still get got by even like the simplest thing that like creates and produces a lot of vibrations. So I'd go to my local Best Buy. I would acquire a boombox. And I would absolutely, blast some bass boosted Lady Gaga music into his ears and just completely fry him. It's just that simple. Next up, we have Chip, the Green Lantern. Now, this is going to be, I guess, like an older version of the Green Lanterns, where they still have that impurity in the lantern from the yellow bug that essentially makes them useless against the color yellow, right? So I'd go to Spirit Halloween. I would acquire a suit not unlike the gentleman from Curious George. And I would show Chip why we are the top apex predator on Earth. I don't think a fight against a squirrel would be particularly easy. I admit that, it's definitely not, especially like a sentient squirrel, they have claws, they have talons, but I have the size advantage, and I think if I land one good hit on Chip, it would be lights out. Next up, and on the topic of Green Lanterns, we have Alan Scott Green Lantern back in the Golden Age. Has a very crippling weakness to wood. He was knocked out by a normal criminal holding a wooden plank. So, go to Home Depot, get a 2x4, and then just swing it at the back of his head when he's not paying attention. It's just that simple. I think you're starting to probably notice a bit of a pattern here, and you will continue to. Next up, we have Gladiator from Marvel. Now, Gladiator is like a Superman-esque character, but the most important thing is that his power comes from his confidence in himself, right? So, for him, I wouldn't even need a physical item. I would just go to the library, so to speak, and I would book up on everything I need to know about Gladiator, right? And I would just go tell him off, right? I bet if I could go to Gladiator with like enough knowledge of his early life, his past, his like, his insecurities, then that should be enough to probably convince him that I'm some sort of like, I don't know, that he's not like strong enough to beat me. I don't really know exactly what my plan would be there. Maybe I make him believe that I'm some sort of like Beyonder type character because I have like knowledge of himself that even he shouldn't know, or maybe just to insult him enough that he feels disparaged that I can start like wailing on him. It has happened before where he's lost his confidence enough that he's been like taken down by some pretty weak characters. So I see this being like a very viable strategy. Next up, we have Power Girl, and so a lesser known weakness of a superhero is Power Girl's weakness to, and I quote, any raw, unprocessed natural material. I don't think hands count, so I don't think you just go to town on her with like your hands. But I don't even need to get anything for prep for this one. I just pick up a sufficiently big rock and then clock her when she's not looking. It's just that simple. Next up, Martian Manhunter. And now Batman has a quote saying, all I would need to stop you is a penny for a book of matches, right? When he's talking to Martian Manhunter. And I'm not as secure as Batman. I like to be a little more, how do you say? I like to have a little more like security with my plan. You know what I mean? Like I need to make sure that whatever I'm doing is gonna work. So I'd go to Target. I'd get a lighter and a can of Axe body spray. Alternatively, I could use like an aerosol can, but I don't think those are very easy to access anymore. They might not even be legal and just bad for the environment. So I guess Axe body spray can work. And then when he's not looking, just hit him with the flamethrower, a little makeshift flamethrower that I have. And that would really be it. He's so weak to fire, it's crippling. He'd fold instantly on the spot. Just how it goes. Next up is going to be Sentry. Now, Sentry is very powerful, again, Superman level character in Marvel. His main weakness, though, is his mental instability. He is convinced that there's another entity that resides in him called the Void that, he thinks has some sort of like power over him, and he can't let the Void go or it's going to kill everybody. So, Sentry is a very easy to manipulate character. We've seen it in the Dark Avengers with Norman Osborn. I'm pretty sure all it would take is just like, 5 minutes of like verbal berating, and I could probably convince him to like fly into the sun or something. Just tell him like, the Void is escaping. You gotta stop it. And, Sentry is like a very mentally unstable character. I see this as being like a very plausible way to win. Next up, we have Ion, Green Lantern. Now, Ion is, his name, Sodam Yat. He's a Daxamite, which is very similar to Kryptonians, except instead of being weak to kryptonite, they are weak to lead. So, we saw this in his fight with Superboy Prime in Sinestro Corps War, where he just gets like his block rocked by Superboy Prime after Superboy Prime like picks up a metal, or I guess like a lead pipe, and just stabs him with it. So, I'd go to the nearest Home Depot, acquire said lead pipe, and then just hit him in the back of the head, and it would just be that simple, right? And now finally we have Mr. McSpittalick. Mr. McSpittalick, I think, is a character that most people probably would include in a list like this. Pretty obvious how you would beat him, right? His main weakness is getting him to read his name backwards or to say it out loud. And despite him knowing that this is his main weakness, he is really just so easy to fool. Superman gets him every time with like some slightly creative use of it. I'm pretty sure Mr. McSpittalick is the kind of guy you just challenge him to some sort of like verbal battle. You say like, oh, I bet you can't pronounce these words, and even though he knows that he's probably going to get tricked into saying his name backwards, he can't deny a challenge like that. He can't. His ego is a little too fragile. So that's all it is. I would just say a few words. I would spell his name backwards. He would read it, and it would be lights out for him. Mr. McSpittalick is gone. And just like that, I scale to high multiversal. Obviously, this list is like kind of satirical, but I do think that at least like one or two of these would have a chance of working out with like a normal street level character that just has the knowledge of these characters being able to beat them. But this was just like a silly fun video that I thought I would cobble together. So don't take it too seriously.